happy holidays, right?
Taylor Swift, McCartney, The Stones, some of the biggest names in music on stage in Indianapolis. Meet the man who's been instrumental in getting them here over the past 25 years. Andy Wilson, the president of Elevate Entertainment, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Andy Wilson has had a front row seat to Indianapolis's evolution into a must-stop destination for the world's biggest artists for a quarter of a century. He's the go-to guy for concert promoters when they need the lowdown on Indy. And I'm really pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Andy Wilson. Andy is the president of Elevate Entertainment and Event Support Services. Been in the live entertainment event game in the Indianapolis region for a long time, more than 25 years. So no better person to talk about Indianapolis's evolution in that market than Andy Wilson. Andy, appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to get into a lot of stuff here, but before, I think the best thing to start with, I've got to ask you about Taylor Swift because as we're taping this, we're just a few days removed from 3 concerts downtown at Lucas Oil Stadium. Massive crowds, massive economic impact. You've been involved in this industry for a long time. Have you ever seen anything like the Taylor Swift effect?
No, I've had so many people ask me that question recently. The only thing I can think of in my lifetime would be the 80s, Michael Jackson during those years where he was just so big. But no, nothing in my career that's compared.
Can you put your finger on it? Can you describe what it is, what makes her events special, her fan base? The economic impact, folks are talking in excess of $100 million, which is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. But what is it about her that just makes people go crazy and spend money?
She's one of a kind, but at the end of the day, I think, like most that are very successful, it's the songwriting, it's her relatability to her audience. And, despite the fact that she is as big as she is, she still seems grounded and people gravitate towards that. Did
Indy's stature, if you will, in the entertainment world and the concert world, did it increase by being able to host Taylor Swift for three events to end her Eras tour?
Absolutely. In my opinion, though, is that Indy's stature on the concert front is one of the best that there is anyway. This only helps prove that. It was an unprecedented weekend. There's no question about it.
Well, talk about Indy's status in the marketplace. You've seen a lot of change over the past 25 years or so. What have you seen in terms of Indy's evolution in hosting live events, big time live events over these 25 years?
Yeah, I got to say, I thought about this because I had a feeling this question might come up, to be honest. And after 25 years, I'm hard pressed to think of a major international artist that hasn't been through Indianapolis. There's very few that I can think of at all levels. And when you consider, the venues we have, I think when you live in a place like Indianapolis, and if you travel and go see shows in other cities, great. But we really are blessed with a lot of really great venues at all levels, theaters, to performing arts centers, to amphitheaters, boutique amphitheaters, stadium, you name it. So I think Indianapolis proves time and time again, as they did this weekend with the Taylor Swift thing, that there's no better host and there's no better system that supports each other in hosting. And it's very unique.
Yeah. When you talk about hosting big events, whether it's concerts, big time sporting events, obviously, Indianapolis has certainly created a perch atop the big city events really around the globe. in hosting these events. What's the secret sauce, in your opinion, about Indianapolis when it comes to big time events? I know you've been involved in any number of those. Most recently, the NBA All-Star Game, which was last year. Next year, the WNBA, which has taken on added significance with Caitlin Clark. What is it about Indy?
You know what it is? It's a landscape that truly supports each other. I mean, look, the entertainment business is highly competitive. There's a lot of venues. There's a lot of people that want to bring shows in. But at the end of the day, it's a very collaborative atmosphere. And that goes on the sports side, as well as it's really becoming more on the music side. I think that's what I noticed this weekend with Taylor. It's like, and we worked on some elements of it ourselves, and it felt very much like it did when we worked on the Super Bowl or the Final Fours. And that was a great feeling. It was like, this is great. And it's always been very supportive on the concert front, but you can see the evolution starting to bleed over into not just sports. And I think that's been coming for a while, though, not just with this weekend, but there's been great support for a lot of major events for a lot of years. It just kind of feels like it kind of culminated this past weekend in some ways.
Do you think this is maybe kind of a tipping point in that regard? This was, in terms of sporting events, this was a record year, I think, or certainly close to it in terms of big time events in Indianapolis. Next year, you talk to the Sports Corporation. They said next year may be even bigger. Then you look at what's happening on the concert side as well. Do you think this is maybe a bit of a tipping point?
I would say yes, to a certain extent, for sure. I think it's been gradually heading in that direction. But Indianapolis, look, it doesn't take long for the word to get out and for people to see what we're doing. And we live in a world now, as we all know, with social media where people can instantly see, wow, they're doing things different there. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we have been for a long time. My childhood, I grew up, my dad worked on the track and field championships and the National Sports Festival way back when. And so my whole life, I've seen this evolution of Indianapolis, kind of scratching and clawing its way into the conversation. And now we're not scratching and clawing anymore. Like, we're leading the charge. And that's really cool at all levels. And it's no wonder why we get such big sporting events. The trick is, how do we keep them coming back? And so I think that's where you look at a thing like this weekend where everybody collaborates, looks at it and says, hey, big economic impact. We all benefit from this, but let's not just settle on how great that is. Let's make sure we make this as great as it possibly can be, and then some. And that's a philosophy I've always adapted to, how I was raised, and it really speaks to our work ethic. But at the end of the day, it really speaks to the whole, Hoosier hospitality, if you will, mentality of not just saying it, but doing it.
How does it work? How does the concert game work in terms of getting these big events? Take us behind the curtain, if you will, on how, a concert like this, a Taylor Swift concert, or I know Billy Joel and Sting are coming, right, to Lucas Oil in February. How do those events happen?
Well, there's any number of ways. At the end of the day, it comes down to the concert promoters who bring the shows to the markets. And they're driven by different factors. Sometimes if a concert promoter owns a venue outright, they want to get a certain number of shows in each year because they have to appease season ticket holders and sponsors, and they got to make money, right? They got to keep the lights on. So, they'll go after shows, throughout the calendar year, or they're working on ones that are seasonal because they have to, or else they won't have a venue, right? So, a lot of it is that, and working together to collaborate to try to make sure to bring great shows to town, but also bring them to town at the right time so they can be as successful as possible. If you bring the same act year after year after year after year, very few of those exist. There certainly are some that can come every year, and but there's not that many. And there's also something to be said for kind of that, building that excitement, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And so, are they going to come through every single tour? No. I mean, I'm a Pearl Jam fan, and the first time they came back was this year. It was like in 14 years. But so you're not going to have your favorite band coming every year, and that's okay,
What? So promoters obviously are very important. Does Indianapolis compete in a sense, for these events with other venues, with other cities? Is there a kind of a peer group of cities or venues that Indy competes with for some of these big time events?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I will say, though, I mean, you're, like I said earlier in the conversation, I'm hard pressed to think of tours that haven't come through You mentioned Billy Joel and Stinger coming. That's great. Billy Joel was here, several years ago as well. U2's been through, Lady Gaga's been through, you name it. I mean, we've had the big names and continue to get them. But like, Ruoff Music Center is the biggest selling amphitheater ticket sales in the world, right? So you've got that venue, and then you've got these state-of-the-art venues downtown, like where Taylor just performed at. I think at the end of the day, like I also mentioned earlier, all levels of capacity are here in town. And the convenience of Indianapolis is really, I think, playing in well. We're right up the road from so many, Cincinnati, Louisville, St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago. We are on the way to everywhere. And we certainly know how to do it and know how to treat the act, treat the fans. And, that's why it's attractive, I think, for the artists to come here, first of all, but for promoters to want to bring shows, whether they're based here or based elsewhere. I mean, it's an attractive city, and why wouldn't it be?
Yeah,
right. When you look at this past weekend, you say, gosh, why would I take my act to that city instead of this one? Well, look what they do, and I think that speaks to all levels. And, in my world, where so much of what we do is focused on grassroots support, really trying to help raise awareness for live events, whether it be, the Indiana State Fair, or the Indy 500 and their events, the concerts and everything in between. A lot of it really comes down to just, the support mechanisms that are in place from a media perspective, from a collaboration perspective. All that stuff basically bleeds over into really benefiting everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the venues that have evolved and that have been added over the years. And there's quite a selection now in Indianapolis. I think of White River State Park and what that venue has become, kind of a small type venue to really a cool place that a lot of people really, really like. As you look at that venue in particular, what do you see the future like as I think about Elanco putting their corporate headquarters right there in the old GM stamping plant site right along the White River, great view of the skyline from the west side of White River. And I think White River is the park looking to expand a little bit. So that whole area is going to be transformed. Do you sense that music is going to be a big part of what that ultimately becomes?
Absolutely. No question about it. I think music's a reason why it's, grown to where it's at. I mean, last week I just worked on the groundbreaking for the expansion that you're talking about. The governor was there, the mayor was there, et cetera. And I think a lot of it comes down to creating a destination, we work on Brown County Music Center. Well, it's a beautiful venue. It's in the perfect location. People in Indiana love to go to Brown County, especially this time of year, see the leaves change. But it's a unique experience. It's a destination, right? And I think White River State Park, it's turned into its own destination within downtown. That's already a destination. So that's a big part of it. And music and entertainment and sports are a huge part of that. And I think the other thing that Indianapolis has going for it, quite frankly, is ease. It's easy to get in. It's easy to get out. You can park, you can walk. I remember during the Super Bowl, I was walking down the street the one night that it was just absolutely packed. And somebody came up to me and they said, "Hey, I want to go to Mass Ave. Do you know where that is?" And I said, "Yeah, it's right over there." And they said, "How long will it take me to get there?" And I said, 2 minutes. "Oh, I can walk?" Yeah, you could. I said, "You can really walk anywhere." And he looked at me for a second like I was crazy, but you could just tell, like, that's what's kind of spread out to people, I think, is people understand the ease of the experience. And then if you go to another city and it's not there, then you really
Right.
appreciate it, right? But
Yeah.
I'm not going to name any names, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of names, you've worked with a lot of big acts and some superstars in the music business. Give us your, and sometimes I'm put on the spot when people ask me, who's your favorite interview? And you think, gosh, I don't know. But as you look at, or you think about Mick Jagger, Britney Spears, Paul McCartney, all those big names, anything stand out to you in terms of your, any moments with any of those that really stand out to you?
I can tell you, I have so many stories. I've been blessed and very grateful for the experiences I've had the last 25 years, but absolutely. You mentioned Mick Jagger, when the Rolling Stones came here in 2015 to the Motor Speedway. I had the opportunity to work on that show, working with Doug Bowles and the great team out there for all these years. And when they brought that show in, they needed some help on that end. And so the normal, concert promotion type support. But this was really cool and a really neat experience because about, I don't know, 10 days before the show, I got a call from the Stones publicist who I've known for a long time. And she said, Andy, I need you to find a local expert who can meet with Mick before the show because he wants to go through some of the things he's planning to say. He likes to do that in every market. And I said, sure. So I went back to them, told them I had somebody. They said, great. That didn't work out. And she called me and said, hey, we have somebody. I said, who? She said, you. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, here's the thing. There's no pictures, no autographs. You can't tell anybody about it. They'll do a screening call. And I have the document hanging in my basement, actually, that I signed. And it was fascinating to go in, not from the perspective of meeting and talking to Mick Jagger. That was cool. But sitting there and whatever, when I went in, I said a couple really stupid things. I walked in the room because each of the Stones had one of their dressing rooms for each member was Gasoline Alley, a big garage.
Yeah, right.
So I walked in and he's sitting in the corner and he says, you must be Andy. And I, like a normal idiot, said, you must be me. And so that was how I started off. Not so good. But I walked in and sat down. He had a few guys there that were taking notes. And he was really going through what he was planning to say. And it just snapped to me immediately, like I have a job. My job is to be here and help, not be, overwhelmed by sitting here and talking to him. And I just started telling him what to say. That was during the Deflategate stuff. And he said,
right.
I'm planning on bringing this up. And I said, no, you need to say this. He was going to call it the Circle City. I said, no, you need to call it Indy. And we went through the whole thing. And I told him, I said, one thing that would be cool when you introduce the band is you should have them be presented and they drink milk. And he looked at me like that was the dumbest thing I've ever, anyone's ever said. And he said, why would I do that?
Yeah.
And I said, because that's what the Indy 500 winner does,
Yeah.
So if you say, Keith Richards and they drink the milk, people are going to go bananas over that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Oh, yeah. And they did it,
Wow.
So the coolest thing for me that night was hearing him say stuff from the stage that I told him to say. It was so awesome. And then the funny thing is, at the end of the conversation, I was in there for 45 minutes or an hour. I was wearing a Wing and Wheels hat. And the guy with him, he said, hey, before you leave, is there a place I could get one of those hats? And I said, yeah, sure. And Mick said, I'd like one too. And I said, I'd get you 10 if you wanted them. Yeah. And he said, I'll take 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I ran out and called Susie Elliott real quick. And I need 10 hats or 11 hats right now. Why? Don't ask. So that was a great story. But, there's a lot of those. But I always tell people when they ask me that, I'm like, well, who do you like? Because I could tell you old dad rock stories that I think are cool, for the bands I like or the sports figures I've met that I like. But, I always ask people, like, what do you like? Because, maybe I met them and that'll be more a year.
Yeah. Yeah. What, in terms, was there anybody, you probably get asked this too, you hear about entertainers with demands, in any entertainer that kind of crazy demands that, they wanted to appear here?
You know what? I think that's kind of the folklore thing a little bit. Definitely, I just read Alex Van Halen's book, and he talks about the brown M&Ms. That was true, but you don't see that kind of stuff really anymore. It's just such a different business on the music side than it was, and so is sports. I mean, I was telling my boys we were watching something the other night. I'm like, I remember when they would pan over to like the dugout and you'd see people smoking cigarettes in a Major League Baseball game. I mean, things have changed, so significantly on all forms. And the reason it's changed is it's big, serious business on all fronts. And, people have an expectation, they pay for that expectation. And when they go there, they expect it.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. A couple more real quick, because I know this in some of my notes, but Britney Spears, anything with Britney Spears?
Yes. I worked on some of those shows. When I first started, it was like during the boom of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Britney and stuff. So there was one day, and this was at Deer Creek at the time, where she was doing a meet and greet. And these acts at that time, meet and greets are normally like, maybe 20, 30 people. It was like hundreds,
Yeah.
And it's a really hot day, and her huge security guy standing there, and he's kind of moving around, and I can sense that something was bothering him. And he says, hey, Andy, can you do me a favor? I said, what's up? And he said, I need you to be Brittany's security guard for a little bit. I'm not feeling so good. And so he just bails, and I'm just standing there, and she looks at me and kind of smiles, and she says, good luck. And so, but my dad was the athletic director in Rushville, and I grew up at events my entire life. And I saw him take over, take charge, lead the charge. And so there's that element of me that's there because of him that I saw. And so when I get in those situations, there's an air of not arrogance, but confidence.
Yeah.
And when you have those moments, you either seize them and do the job, do the best of your ability, no matter if you're even qualified.
Yeah.
So,
How one more? How about Paul McCartney?
Well, Paul McCartney, I've had the opportunity to work on those a few times. My favorite one was the last time he was in Indy, and it was a promoter from out of state who called and said, hey, the building recommended that we work with you to help us. So we're going to do a press conference. And they said, we've got, I think it was $50,000 to spend on the press event. Do you think you could use that? Is that enough? I said, oh yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm like, really? And so, I remember having the best time. Like I was just like firing up all these ideas. Like, let's do an English breakfast and let's do a tea. Let's have Union Jack umbrellas hanging from the ceilings and, all of these things. And it was absolutely a blast. We didn't even he wasn't even there. Yeah. But it was wonderful. And the other part I'll tell you about that, this happened with McCartney. Although I chose not to meet him and Eddie Van Halen, because the two of my absolute favorites. And I just decided I wanted to leave a few people on the shelf. Yep. Sometimes I look back like I wish I wouldn't have, but there was a time when Bob Cavoya was going back to meet Paul, and he said, hey, do you want to come in? And I said, you know what, I'm going to pass. This is your moment. Do your thing. Yeah. And I did the same with Eddie Van Halen as well. And honestly, I'm glad I did, because it was just like, those are two people that I just grew up really admiring. And it's kind of nice to have that.
Yeah. Interesting. Hey, you mentioned the Stones concert at IMS. Do you think IMS will ever do another big time concert? I know Doug Bowles has talked about that possibility, but that, if it would come to fruition, it would have to be a really, really big act to do it. What's your gut? Do you sense another big time concert out there?
My short answer would be I don't know. But my other answer would be, when they did the Stones, it was fantastic. It was an amazing experience. And when they do music out there, whether it's Card Day or any number of things, obviously Snake Pit, they do it right. People really enjoyed themselves. It's such a unique place. I love the Stones thing. It was awesome to see that. Will there ever be one there again? I don't know.
Yeah.
If there is, I see no reason why it wouldn't be a success.
Yep. Much more ahead on the Business and Beyond podcast with Andy Wilson. We're talking music, maybe what's next for Indianapolis and Indiana. That's when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Andy Wilson. He's the president of Elevate Entertainment and Event Support Services, a music marketing, big-time event marketing company here in Indianapolis. Andy's been in the business for, more than 25 years here in Indianapolis, so certainly seen a lot and a lot of change over those years. But Andy, and you are a native Hoosier, right? You grew up in Rush County?
That's right. I'm from Rushville. Yep.
All right. So I think I know the answer to this because you mentioned your dad was the athletic director, right, at Rushville High School. So you were around events, and then I think you indicated he was involved in some U.S. track and field events and other kinds of things. You kind of grew up. Is that how you grew up in that around big time events?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in that atmosphere. My parents are both educators. My sister as well, she is. So I grew up going to every football game, basketball game in central Indiana because of what Dad did. And so I was always around that. And he would bring in wrestling to Rushville. He was the track coach, soccer coach, et cetera. And he got involved in with USA Track and Field or whatever it might have been called at the time. But he worked on every year they would do those the track and field, the stuff they now do in Oregon, they used to do out there at Carroll Stadium. And he would also be on TV, like doing the broadcast for state finals, stuff like that.
Yeah.
He did the voice for what was that professional soccer team? I forget what they were called.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was always involved in around events. So that I was by virtue of that. But then my dad took me to, Bengals games and Reds games before the Colts came to town, and then the Colts. And, the night that changed my life, honestly, for the trajectory of where I'm working in events was, 1988, I went to the Monsters of Rock show with Van Halen at the Hoosier Dome, and it was promoted by Sunshine Promotions. And the person or company that did the tour was a guy named Louis Messina, who's still in the business. And little did I know that, fast forward years later, after I graduated college, a few years after that, I'd be working for Sunshine, and eventually I'd work on events with Messina, et cetera. So that was always kind of that place. But I was very fortunate that I grew up and my parents really fed that fire for me and let me go to things, let me go to concerts, and things like that.
As you look at the impact that the music industry has on communities around the country, but think about Indianapolis. Every business, every industry in the state is trying to figure out how to keep talent, but also attract talent and get talent, to move here and to stay here, to live, work, and play, if you will. What role does entertainment, the events, the things that we're talking about here, in your view, what role does entertainment have in talent attraction?
Critical, 100% critical, not just like an add-on thing at all. I'm glad you asked that question because, a lot of times it's easy to talk about the big names, but the other big part of the entertainment in Indianapolis, and we're fortunate to work on a lot of these things too, is, we've got the Arts Council. We've got some really amazing nonprofit arts organizations. We're lucky to work with the Symphonic Choir and work with the Jazz Foundation, the Jazz Fest, and others. And, these people do amazing work that really help to give Indianapolis a flavor, right? And a lot of this has kind of created these kind of zones around town, whether that be Fountain Square or Broad Ripple or Maps Ave or, Speedway. I mean, downtown Speedway is awesome. I know they have a music venue, but it's a great place to go.
You're right. You're so right. So many people don't realize what has happened in downtown Speedway over the last decade. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, I had we work on Cirque du Soleil and a bunch of markets. We had them in town recently, and we had some time to kill before media. So I took some of them to downtown Speedway. We ate at Charlie Brown's, and we went over to the track, and they did a photo out there. And I was like, "This is really great. You should do it." Because they have a lot of followers, that kind of thing. And after we were done, they were like, "This was the best."
Nice.
I'm thinking, they've done Times Square, they've done all this stuff, right? I'm like, why do you say that? She said, it's just so unique, and everybody was so kind and blah, blah, blah. And my point is that, all of it feeds the fire, right? And, you see a big weekend like the Taylor Swift weekend, but gosh, it's all of those efforts that go into place. And the cool thing is that everybody got to be a part of even last weekend too, And so by not leaving people out and propping people up and letting them attach themselves to these major events, it helps all of them. It helps all of us, and it's really cool. It's really cool. That's I think that the future's now, and the future, as far as I'm concerned, is being done right because the city's so supportive.
Yeah. And I'll get as we kind of wind down here, your vision as you look to the future. I think it's been interesting to watch the evolution of sports and athletics and big time events in Indianapolis over really the past basically 40 years plus and what Indianapolis has become. Then you look at the Indiana Sports Corporation coming out with their, I think it was their 25-year vision to become the epicenter of sport across multiple platforms, women's sports, sports technology, all those kinds of things, and continuing to do the big events. As you think about that, and I have no doubt that that can be achieved, no doubt whatsoever, but as you look at that and that vision that's laid out for Indianapolis, what do you see? How do you see entertainment and music in these big events playing a role in Indy's future?
Well, I think they already are, first and foremost. And I think as long as we keep supporting each other, I mean, look, my business, Elevate, is really based on, I always tell people, 99% of the clients we have marketing and PR people. They're good at their jobs. We come in and we're the icing on the cake with the sprinkles and the whipped cream. You know what I mean? And when you have that kind of mentality, and I'm talking top to bottom, if it's Doug Bowles at the track, if it's Pete Ward at the Colts, it doesn't matter who it is, those people, the people that are successful are the ones that realize that, hey, I got to surround myself with the best, right? And I'm not suggesting anything with that, other than the fact that they recognize that, we need to check all the boxes. Yeah. And I think when you have that mentality with your professional sports teams, with the amateur teams, with your universities, with your arts organizations, promoters, venues, it's a very selfless mentality. And that's not always easy in a business that's highly competitive. And you can look at it one or two ways. You can say, hey, I don't care about their event. We have an event that same weekend. We're going to stomp them out. And that's a normal thought. Or how do you embrace, how do you complement, how do you enhance each other in a way that benefits everybody, right? Because it's trickle down. It's not just about the people doing the events. It's about the restaurants, the hotels, the Lyft drivers, the Uber drivers, all of the things. I mean, so many people benefit when events are happening. Whether if they take 500 or 1,000 people to put on an event, well, those people got to be paid.
Yep.
There's a lot going on. And I think when you have a support system like the Sports Corps and others from the top down, everybody benefits. Even the donut county, even the whole state benefits. And that's that's the trajectory. The cool thing is we're talking about it from the standpoint of the city doing it right. It took a long time for them to build things up, but it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yep. Sure. Well, Andy Wilson, you've had a front row seat for so much of that change over the past 25 years, and so much that will be ahead as well. Andy is the president of Elevate Entertainment and Event Support Services. Andy, appreciate you taking the time as always, and I look forward to seeing you around the city sometime soon.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.